President Trump is closing out the year with a focus on foreign policy. He's set to meet with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at Mar-a-Lago later today. That follows a sit-down with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy yesterday. After the meeting, both leaders expressed optimism about a potential Russia-Ukraine peace plan.
I really believe we're probably, Mr. President, by far closer than ever before with both parties.
20-point peace plan, 90% agreed, and U.S.-Ukraine security guarantees 100% agreed.
CBS News White House reporter Willie James Inman joins us from West Palm Beach, Florida. So, Willie, what details are we learning about this peace proposal, and what are the sticking points we're seeing?
Hey there, Lindsay. Good morning to you. Well, this 20-point peace proposal that really has been spearheaded by the U.S. was revised in large part. Of course, individuals will point out, especially Zelenskyy himself, it heavily favored the Russian point of view. So the Ukrainians have had some input there. There have been some negotiations about that document. Moscow has yet to weigh in on the latest points of this document, but the president did speak with President Putin of Russia ahead of his meeting yesterday with President Zelenskyy. He also mentioned that he would call President Putin following this meeting. Now, the key sticking points seem to be the situation around territory, specifically the Donbas region. Remember, President Putin essentially demanding that Ukraine give up the Donbas, which is the industrial heartland of Ukraine. Now, Zelenskyy has essentially previously poured cold water on that idea, but he has expressed the willingness to potentially look into a demilitarized zone, but he's mentioned that his nation would need to weigh in with a national referendum to be able to talk about any type of territorial concessions. On top of that, you have the security guarantees. Now, Zelenskyy says they're 100% there in terms of that support from the West, including the U.S., but President Trump says that 95% of the security guarantees have been addressed with Ukraine. Now, it's important to note that for any type of security guarantees, any kind of type of financing or anything like that, the president will likely need the buy-in of Congress to be able to continue to support Ukraine. And listen to what some members are saying.
They're asking for security assurances for the future, to have their sovereignty, to have a future. Obviously, we need to be on the side of what they want, which is sovereignty. They're on the side of democracy, liberty, and Russia's on the side of authoritarianism and aggression.
In a briefing with reporters following his meeting with President Trump, Zelenskyy talked about some of the details in terms of the timeline of those security guarantees, mentioning that 15 years was the initial thought in terms of a timeline of support for security guarantees. But he mentioned that in his meeting with President Trump, that he specifically asked for decades more, up to 50 years of support, noting that this ongoing conflict and back and forth with Russia has been going on for about 15 years. So the Ukrainians looking for decades of support that the president is potentially considering there. So we'll have to wait and see in terms of how that plays out. The president mentioning that it will take a couple more weeks for these details to be hammered out, Lindsay.
And President Trump will also meet with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu today. What do we know?
Yeah, that's right. The president focusing heavily on foreign policy at his South Florida home at Mar-a-Lago, meeting with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu today. A specific focus on the Gaza ceasefire, phase 2 of that plan, which essentially calls for the demilitarization of Hamas and an international force to really essentially have security in Gaza. So that certainly will be something that the two leaders will discuss on top of other issues like Iran and Lebanon in the region, Lindsay.
Okay, Willie, thank you.